For my Chaos Lord, I want the armour to have quite a bright and shiny look. So first off, you want to pick a fairly light undercoat, or in this case, because I don't have any white, I've used a brown. But you definitely don't want to use a black, because the darker the undercoat, the more layers you're going to have to apply over it to get a consistent look. The first colour I've applied is Bone, which is going to go onto all the areas which eventually are going to end up red. And then the coat you can see me applying here is Screaming Skull. And the next colour to be used is Pallid Witch Flesh. And with the Screaming Skull and the Pallid Witch Flesh, I'm aiming to cover the topmost areas. So for example, I'm only covering the upper part of the arm, or I'm covering the top half of the knee pad but not the lower part of the knee pad, to give a little difference in colour. And here's a quick look so you can get a quick idea of where those lighted areas are that I've applied those lighter colours to try and make certain areas pop out. Next, I've added a fine line of Agrax Earthshade, and I've applied this across the arms and also into the eye sockets on the backpack. And I will leave this to dry, and then once it's dry, I will thin some Agrax Earthshade down with some Lamia Medium, and I will apply it around the edges of the armour, because the edges are going to be gold. So you want to do something just to add a little bit of darkness between the main armour and the edging of the armour to help to separate the two. And now for starting to make the armour look red, and we're going to use Agron Red. And the first coat looks quite weak, but you need approximately 3, maybe 4 coats of this to give yourself a good colour of the red. This is going to somewhat dilute the highlights you put on underneath, and those highlights are going to be quite subtle when the miniature's finished, and it's only really when the light catches it at certain angles that those highlights are going to then pop out and start to be noticed. But I think the end result for the armour looks quite nice at the end. Here you'll notice that the horns on the head have been painted with Bone, and then a wash of Agrax Earthshade was applied over them for the horns. And I'm now working on the gold areas. Balthazar gold has already been applied, and I'm now applying the Gehenna's gold onto all of the gold areas. You'll need at least 2 coats of the first one, because you want a good base coat before applying the second paint. And lastly, for the gold, I've used Auric Armour Gold, and I just want to catch the topmost surfaces with this gold. I'm not trying to cover every single piece of the golden areas, just trying to bring it out some. I was originally planning on painting the armour trims on the knees with silver. However, I realised that this would break the shape and form of the miniature, and it would somehow make the lower part of the leg separate to the upper part of the body. So that's why I ended up sticking to doing gold on all of it. So instead, as a way of trying to break the miniature up a little bit and have some colours in there other than just gold, I've used Lead Belcher for this piece, as you can see in the centre of the miniature, and a few other areas, followed by using the side of the bush with painting Ironbreaker. And lastly, I used a little bit of Runefang Steel, only this time I'm trying to cover the very topmost edges of these areas. For the coil area of the plasma pistol, I started with Celestial Grey first, and that's because I wanted to have a reasonably dark undercoat for the area, but I wanted to make sure it didn't have the original colour of the brown. Then I watered down some Lothorn blue and covered the entire area with the blue. Then I mixed some Lamia Medium into some Caraberg Crimson and applied that into the area, and gave it a chance to dry, and then reapplied it again. And once this area had time to dry, I applied a gloss varnish to the area. At this point, looking at the miniature, it looks very shiny, so I wanted to try and add a few areas which are going to take some of that shine out of the miniature and basically give it the complete opposite. So I'm going to end up applying some stuff which is going to look far more diluted in its brightness. So this is one of the reasons why, instead of painting the skull in a metallic colour, I've chosen to paint the skull as though it's an actual skull. And here you can see I'm painting the internal armour, which I started off with Mechanicus standard grey into the area, and then after that null oil was applied, so that will sink into the recesses and it adds a little bit of depth of colour, but at the same time it's trying to keep it dull and get rid of that brightness. For the tubes on the side, Lothorn blue was applied first, and then Carroburg crimson was applied over it afterwards, and again that helps to dull the paint which was underneath. For the green of the eyes, Moot green was applied to the whole of the eye area first, then Flaskets yellow was applied to the lower half of the eye. Corellia green shade was then applied to the whole of the eye once the initial paints were dry, and then the miniature was left upside down to encourage this colour to fall to the upper side of the eye rather than the lower side. Once this was dry, a small dot of white scar was applied for the light reflection, and after this a gloss varnish was applied to the eye just to finish it off. The cloak and the sword I'm going to do a separate video on, and also remember to look at the finished miniature in the description to see the end result. If you like the video, remember to subscribe, click the notification bell, and also share the video with your friends.